Hello there and welcome. If you find stories of faith and wonder as captivating as I do, then you're in the right place. Today we're going to delve into a truly remarkable story that has touched the hearts of millions. It's the story of a young girl from a small town in France who experienced something extraordinary, something that would echo through the centuries. I invite you to join me on this journey into the life of Saint Bernadette Soubirous, and if you enjoy these tales of the saints, be sure to subscribe for more. Let's begin with her humble origins, and the day that changed everything for her and for the world. Bernadette Soubirous was born in 1844 into a poor family in the town of Lourdes in the south of France. Her family lived in what was once a local jail, a single damp and dark room called Le Cachot, which shows just how impoverished they were. Bernadette herself was often unwell, suffering from asthma for most of her short life. She was not well educated in the traditional sense. In fact, she struggled to learn her catechism, and was considered by many to be quite simple. Yet it was this very girl, the eldest of 9 children, unassuming and frail, who was chosen for a series of profound and heavenly encounters that would place her and her small town at the center of the Catholic world. The pivotal day was the 11th of February, 1858. Bernadette, then aged 14, went out with her sister and a friend to gather firewood near the Grotto of Miracles. While the other girls crossed the chilly stream to look for wood, Bernadette hesitated, worried about her poor health. It was in that moment of solitude that she heard a sound like a gust of wind, yet the trees around her were perfectly still. Looking towards the grotto, a dark and unused cave in the rock, she saw a dazzling light. And within that light, she saw a beautiful lady, dressed in white with a blue sash and a golden rose on each foot. This was the first of 18 apparitions. The beautiful lady, who would later reveal herself as the Immaculate Conception, a name for the Virgin Mary, smiled at Bernadette and made the sign of the cross. Bernadette, though initially frightened, felt a sense of peace wash over her. She took out her rosary and began to pray. The lady prayed with her, the beads of her own rosary gliding through her fingers, but her lips did not move except for when they recited the Glory Be at the end of each decade. This silent, prayerful meeting set the stage for a series of events that would test Bernadette's faith and courage in the face of disbelief and scrutiny from her family, the local clergy, and the town authorities. The visions at the grotto continued, and with each one, Bernadette's life became more complicated. The local authorities were deeply skeptical and suspicious of the growing crowds that gathered to watch the young girl in her state of ecstatic prayer. They saw her as a troublemaker, perhaps even mentally unwell, and they did everything in their power to stop the gatherings. They interrogated her harshly, threatened her with prison, and tried to intimidate her into admitting she had made the whole story up. Yet, through it all, Bernadette remained steadfast. She spoke with a simple, unshakable honesty, describing only what she saw and heard, never adding anything for effect or backing down under pressure. During the 9th apparition, the lady gave Bernadette a strange instruction. She told her to go and drink from the spring and wash in it. Bernadette looked around but saw no spring. Confused, she began to scrape at a muddy patch of ground at the back of the grotto. As she dug with her hands, a small, murky puddle of water began to form. To the disgust of the onlookers, she cupped the muddy water and drank it, then smeared some of the mud on her face. Many who had come believing in her went away thinking she was mad. But Bernadette was only doing as the lady had asked, an act of pure obedience and humility. The very next day, the muddy puddle had transformed into a clear, flowing spring of water. This was the beginning of the famous Lourdes Spring, a source of water that continues to flow to this day. Soon after, incredible stories began to emerge. A local man who had been blind in one eye for 20 years bathed his eye with water from the spring and had his sight instantly restored. A mother whose child was dying dipped him into the freezing water and he made a complete recovery. These were the first of thousands of medically inexplicable healings that have since been attributed to the waters of Lourdes, drawing millions of pilgrims to the grotto seeking physical and spiritual comfort. The lady's message, conveyed through Bernadette, was a simple one, a call for prayer and penance. She asked for a chapel to be built at the grotto, and for people to come in procession. Bernadette faithfully relayed these requests to the parish priest, Father Péramale, a man who was initially one of her harshest critics. He demanded to know the lady's name, and it was only during the 16th apparition that she finally revealed it. Speaking in the local dialect, she said, "I am the Immaculate Conception." This was a profound theological statement, one that an uneducated girl like Bernadette was highly unlikely to have invented, and it helped to convince the church authorities of the authenticity of her visions. After the apparitions concluded, Bernadette sought a quiet life away from the fame and curiosity that now surrounded her. She joined the Sisters of Charity at their convent in Nevers, a town far from Lourdes. There she lived a life of quiet prayer and service, working in the infirmary and as a sacristan, all while suffering from chronic illness, including tuberculosis of the bone in her knee, which caused her immense pain. She never returned to Lourdes and rarely spoke of her visions unless asked directly by her superiors. She passed away on the 16th of April, 1879, at the young age of just 35, her final words being, "Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for me, a poor sinner." 30 years later in 1909, as part of the formal process for her beatification, the church required that her body be exhumed and identified. This is a standard procedure. When the officials, including doctors and representatives of the church, opened her coffin, they were met with a truly astonishing sight. Despite the dampness of the tomb and the fact that her habit was moist and her rosary was rusted, the body of Bernadette Soubirous was perfectly preserved. Her skin was intact, her face was serene, and there was no odor of decay. She appeared simply to be asleep, a remarkable state for someone who had been buried for 3 decades. This state is known as incorruptibility. In simple terms, it means that a body has not undergone the normal process of decomposition after death, without any artificial means of preservation like embalming. In the history of the Catholic Church, the bodies of a number of saints have been found in this state, sometimes hundreds of years after their death. For many believers, this is seen as a powerful miracle, a sign from God that the person lived a life of exceptional holiness. The preservation of Bernadette's body, especially given the painful illnesses that ravaged it in life, seemed a particularly potent sign of her sanctity. Bernadette's body was exhumed twice more, in 1919 and again in 1925, and on each occasion, it was found to be in the same state of preservation. After the final exhumation, a light wax mask was placed over her face and hands. This was not to hide any decay, but because her skin had taken on a slightly darker parchment-like tone from its exposure to the air, and the church wished for her to be presented to pilgrims with the serene, lifelike appearance she had when first discovered. Her body now rests in a beautiful crystal and gold reliquary in the chapel of the convent at Nevers, where countless pilgrims come to see her and pray. It is truly fascinating to consider the phenomenon of incorruptibility, and it's natural to wonder what the Catholic Church officially teaches about it. Many people immediately assume that an incorrupt body is definitive proof of sainthood, a miracle that automatically qualifies a person for canonization. However, this is not quite the case. The Church is very careful and methodical in its approach. While the preservation of a body like Saint Bernadette's is considered a favorable sign of God's grace and the person's holiness, it is not in itself considered a formal miracle for the cause of sainthood. The Church looks for other, separate miracles that occur through the person's intercession after their death. The primary focus for declaring someone a saint is the evidence of a life lived with heroic virtue. This means looking at how the person lived their life on earth. Did they show extraordinary faith, hope, and charity? Did they live the Christian virtues to a heroic degree? For Bernadette, the Church examined her humility, her unwavering honesty under pressure, her obedience, her patience in suffering, and her simple, profound faith. It was her virtuous life, not the state of her body after death, that formed the foundation of her cause for sainthood. The incorruptibility was seen as a beautiful divine confirmation of what her life had already demonstrated. Skeptics and scientists have proposed natural explanations for some cases of incorruptibility, such as saponification, where body fat turns into a waxy substance, or conditions of the soil and tomb that might naturally mummify a body. However, in the case of Saint Bernadette, these explanations seem to fall short. The tomb was noted to be damp, conditions which normally accelerate rather than prevent decomposition. Furthermore, the flexibility of her limbs and the preservation of her internal organs, as noted by the examining doctors, were particularly difficult to explain through known natural processes. For believers, this lack of a clear scientific explanation only strengthens the belief that it is a supernatural sign. Ultimately, the story of Saint Bernadette is not just about visions or an undecayed body, it is a story of how God can work through the most humble and unlikely of people. Bernadette's life reminds us that great faith does not require great intellect or high social standing. Her incorrupt body, resting peacefully in Nevers, serves as a powerful and visible symbol of her pure life and the heavenly promises she so faithfully conveyed. It is an invitation to look beyond the surface of things, to a deeper reality of faith and grace. Thank you for joining me today, and I do hope you'll follow along for more stories that inspire.